Today, someone took something from you. Maybe you didn't even notice. Maybe it was something small. Maybe it was something big. But that feeling came right away. This is wrong, you said. No explanation needed. You already knew it inside. A voice inside you said, this is a crime, and you understood immediately.
Wrong.
Now I'm going to ask you a question. Where does that voice come from? Who put it there? And more importantly, when was that feeling felt for the very first time? Forget the laws. Forget the courts. Forget the police, the prisons, the punishments, forget all of it. Go back 300,000 years. In the heart of Africa, there's a small group of humans. They're making fire. They're sharing meat. They're sleeping. They're waking up. And one night, for the very first time, someone does something. Takes something that belongs to someone else. Or harms someone. Or betrays the group. No laws. No courts. But something happens. Something very serious. You've always been told. Crime came with civilization. Once cities were built, property was defined, writing was invented, that's when crime began. That's wrong. Completely wrong. Crime came before writing. Before cities. Long before laws. And there is archaeological evidence to prove it. There are bones. There are marks. Crime scene traces left thousands of years ago. Here's the part most people never hear. The first crime in human history was a murder. But more important than the murder, that murder was intentional. And that intention tells us a great deal. Because intention means morality. Morality means knowing the difference between right and wrong. And knowing the difference between right and wrong means crime already existed. Let that sentence sink in. Crime came before law. Because conscience came before law. There's a cave in Spain. Atapuerca. Inside, human bones dating back 430,000 years were found. These are not ordinary fossils. A skull has 2 holes in it. Same angle. Same tool. Delivered before death. Archaeologists studied this for a long time. The conclusion is clear, this was not an accident. This was an attack. 430,000 years ago, one human intentionally killed another. No writing. No laws. But murder, yes. But wait. Animals kill other animals too. A lion kills a deer. Is that a crime? No. So what's the difference? The difference is this: animals don't break rules. Because they have no rules to break. But the person who killed the owner of that Atapuerca skull, they already knew something. They knew something was wrong. And that awareness changes everything. Now let's go even further back. 1.3 million years ago. A bone was found in Swartkrans Cave in South Africa. It belonged to Homo erectus. Marks on it made with a stone tool. Signs of violence. Made by another human. This is one of the oldest known traces of human-on-human violence. 1.3 million years ago. Homo erectus isn't even fully considered human yet. But violence was already there. Violence came before us. So why? Evolutionary anthropologists have studied this extensively. And here's what they found: violence within groups is far older than violence between groups. So the first crime wasn't against a stranger. It was against someone familiar. Against someone in your own group. This is very important. Because it tells us, the first crime wasn't about resources. It was about status. It was about jealousy. It was about betrayal. Emotions came before weapons. So here's what emerges. The first crime in human history was an act of violence. But what made that violence a crime wasn't the physical act itself. It was the intent, the feeling, and the awareness behind it. Someone did something knowing it was wrong. And that tells us this: moral consciousness evolved before law. Humans felt what a rule violation was even before any rules were set. Conscience is not the product of civilization. It is the cause of it. Why did this evolve this way? Because for a species living in small groups, order within the group was a matter of life and death. If someone steals food from the group weakens. If someone turns out to be untrustworthy, cooperation breaks down. If someone seizes the leader's position by force, everyone suffers. So the brain developed a dedicated system for the feeling of injustice. Fast. Automatic. Powerful. The feeling of this isn't right is an alarm system. It evolved to protect the group. And this alarm system kicks in very early. It's there in babies too. Nobody taught them. It comes instinctively. The brain doesn't learn the concept of justice from scratch. It comes preloaded. Throughout thousands of generations, individuals who noticed injustice survived. Those who didn't make it. The sense of justice is a survival weapon. But here's what we need to ask. If crime is this ancient, if violence and theft and betrayal have always existed, what does that mean? Is human nature evil? Are we born inclined toward crime? No. Quite the opposite. And this is exactly the point most people miss. Shanidar cave in Iraq. 65,000 years ago, a Neanderthal lived and died there. When his bones were examined, something shocking emerged. This man had one arm. He was blind. He was old. And he had survived for a long time. He couldn't have lived alone. Someone fed him, protected him, carried him. So the same species that invented violence, that same species cared for the disabled. The same brain that committed murder, that same brain helped others. Crime and compassion come from the same source. Now let's ask the question nobody asks. Who punished the first crime? There were no laws. No judges. But anthropologists know this: in small hunter-gatherer groups, norm violations were punished by the group. Exile. Exclusion. Sometimes death. So the first courtroom was in front of the cave. The jury was the entire tribe. And the punishment, most of the time, was the community leaving you behind. Back then, that meant one thing: death. Exile was the first prison sentence. And let's be fair, there's something worth mentioning here. When archaeologists tried to figure out what the first theft in history was, they landed on a pretty funny conclusion. Most likely, it was stolen meat. While someone returned from a hunt, another group member quietly ate what they'd brought back. So humanity's first criminal was probably a hungry, impatient, greedy caveman. Could have been Grumk. Grumk would absolutely do something like that. But he would have felt bad about it afterward. Probably. You didn't need language to understand crime and punishment. Body language was enough. The shame on someone's face. The looks from others. The feeling of being ignored by the group. Social exclusion is processed by the brain like physical pain. Neuroscience has proven this. So shame evolved too. Guilt evolved too. These aren't emotions society invented to control you. These are instincts that evolved so you could stay in your group. To feel shame is to be human. But here's the hardest part. The victims in the oldest documented murders in history were children. At Atapuerca, 9,000 years ago, signs of violence were found on infant bones. Some may be the earliest traces of the slave trade. Some were ritual. Some were senseless brutality. And this tells us, crime didn't only come from hunger or jealousy. It also came from power. The domination of the strong over the weak, that is just as ancient. The dark side of humanity is the same age as its light. In 2016, a discovery was made at Nataruk in Kenya. 27 skeletons dating back 10,000 years were found. All had been killed violently. Skulls were shattered. Hands were bound behind their backs, including a pregnant woman. This is the oldest known massacre site. No laws. No state. No army. But organized violence existed. Planned violence existed. One group had come together to wipe out another. War is crime itself. Now come back to today. What you feel when someone takes something from you, that anger, that "this is unfair" feeling, is a 430,000-year-old inheritance. What you feel when someone lies to you, that pain of betrayal, has passed through thousands of generations to reach you. And that voice that says this is wrong every time you witness a crime, that conscience, is the very thing that makes you human. You didn't invent crime, but you carry the brain that knows it's wrong. We don't know exactly when the first crime in history happened. Not exactly. But when the first conscience appeared, that we know. At the same moment as the first crime. Because when someone did something wrong, someone else said that's wrong. And that voice is still inside you.